The Sheila Gare Award for the Best Personal Experience Article. And our nominees are Dancing in Small Spaces by Leslie Davidson, Independence by Patty Lefkos, Retire and Rewire by Gary Litke, The Principle of Parking by Chris Harker, Memories of Zeballos by Stephanie Koropatnik, and My North by Helen McGull. And here's the interview with our winner. So I'm pleased to welcome to our broadcast today Leslie Davidson, author of Dancing in Small Spaces, which appeared in PostScript and is a finalist for the Article of the Year Award. Welcome, Leslie.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you, Tim.
Now, your article, Dancing in Small Spaces, was extracts from your book of the same name. And it covers a period in your life that was dramatic, I guess would be a even way of putting it. Maybe you could describe a little bit of the circumstance that led you to write that book.
Okay. Well, in 2011, my husband and I were both retired teachers. Lincoln was a librarian. I was a primary teacher mostly. And he had been retired for 3 years. It was I had been retired for 3 years. It was my third year in retirement, his fifth. And I started to experience some symptoms that I could only think were neurological, dragging foot and some unsteadiness on my feet. And it turned out that I had Parkinson's disease. We found that out quite quickly. And at the same time, we were dealing with some cognitive issues with Lincoln. And shortly after my diagnosis, his diagnosis came in that he had some form of dementia, probably Alzheimer's at the time. It turned out to be Lewy body dementia in the end, but very, very hard to distinguish between dementias in the early stages. So that happened within a four-month period, those two diagnoses, though we had been symptomatic, both of us, for longer than that. And it was about figuring out how to negotiate our way through retirement with these big things happening. We had to get up every day, and we had to eat and do laundry and stay healthy. And so we just kind of walked through it until we both realized that we were so supported, that we had such good people in our lives, that this really was going to be okay. For the time being, it was going to be okay. Yeah.
Now, when you and I were working on our presentation of this article, I talked to you about the challenge I felt from the editor's point of view of putting this in front of people, because I think the way we put it was your writing style was associative, not linear. You gathered bunches of images and senses around little anecdotes and stitched them together very poetically. Is that the way you always write, or is that the only way you could write about this incident?
It was the only way I could write about this one, Tim. I didn't know I was writing a book until I was well into the process, or to talk about Lincoln in front of him. It was of course very hurtful for him and confusing. So I put everything down in writing that I thought people needed to know. And I also put down what I needed to express. Sometimes my sadness, sometimes how funny it was. And so I had this collection of emails, and I had written articles for an online magazine out of England, written and edited entirely by people with Parkinson's. And I had some journal entries, and I had lots of photographs, and COVID came, and it seemed a good thing to do. Once I started to frame things to make them accessible for other people, and to be quite honest, Tim, to present myself as the person I wanted to be, rather than maybe the person I was all the time, and that changed me. It focusing on gratitude and focusing on the joy that we were still able to experience, and knowing that those were the stories that would give heart to people who loved him.
What I hear you saying is, what I hear you saying is, you weren't writing because you had it all sorted out and you understood. You were writing to help you understand and to process.
To process, exactly. And it was very, and it did that. It absolutely did that. There often I would write something down and discover at the end that I understood. I understood how important it was to ask for help, for example. I found that very, very difficult. I still find it difficult, but writing about it I could look at it and say, that's just silly. That's something around ego and pride, and you need it, ask for it, because all these people are waiting to give it.
There's a very beautiful segment of that article that describes you going to the grocery store with Lincoln and your experience there, and seeing how the community responds to him. Can you talk about that?
Well, he was a very loved man in Grand Forks. He was a character. He was iconoclastic. He was a beloved librarian, just gentle guy. And when we went to and Lincoln did all the grocery shopping, I always laugh because the big three for couples to fight about are money, chores, money, chores, and childcare, I think. And we never fought. We fought, but we didn't fight about those things. And Lincoln did more than his share of stuff around the house. I'm, as you said, not very linear, and he was very linear. So he always had his lists and knew what the next job was. And I was, making Play-Doh on the stove and reading to a kid and talking to my colleague about a project, and all at the same time. And when I started having to go to the grocery store with him because he wasn't able to go by himself anymore, I realized what relationships he had developed. It was lovely. Particularly the manager of the produce department in our Overweighty greeted him with a hug. The cashiers helped him with his debit card. They would put the numbers in. They knew his PIN. And there were students that he had taught, and that was particularly lovely to run across a kid who would talk to him and then look at me and say, Mr. Ford always had a book for me, or when I went into the library and because I was upset, he wouldn't make a fuss. He would just let me be and ask me if I was okay, and that would be it.
Our society is so geared up for accomplishment and strength and being good looking and vigorous and independent, and all these messages we get, you're strong and you believe in yourself. And there comes a time in life for all of us, whatever the circumstances are, where we could really use some help. And you touched on that briefly, that this is a great internal struggle. I think many people in retirement have to go through some of those conversations with themselves. What have you learned about life and what life is about through being confronted with some of these vulnerabilities?
Oh boy. I guess I've learned that Acceptance is a real thing. I say at some point in the book, I say I don't even know what acceptance means, and I didn't at the time that I wrote that piece. But I have stopped chafing at the limits, at the fact that my world has become very small. Our world together became very small when it had been huge. We were traveling the world literally, and being impulsive and doing things on the spur of the moment and reveling in our children's successes and visiting them, and then that all changed, and it's, it's very easy to feel very sorry for yourself and to sink into sadness and despair. But that's so uncomfortable. That's such an uncomfortable place to live. And I'd been happy. I'd been a very blessed, fortunate person, and I was used to liking my life and feeling gratitude for it. And I needed to find a way to get back to that.
So in that moment of sadness, suddenly you become aware of this poem. And I wonder if you could read it for us, and then we'll talk about why it meant what it did.
Look for me in the people I've known or loved, and if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. I've been very, very, very gratified by the letters and the emails that have come from people I don't know. You expect your friends and family to be kind, but I have a file that's quite, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 some handwritten, typed and emailed letters saying, thanks for this. It helped. And people telling their own stories, which I've really, really liked.
Before I let you go, I should give you some insight into the voting process for these awards. You wrote this article without an eye to win awards, I don't think. You were just sharing your story. But one of the things our magazine does is we really want to celebrate the examples of great writing that our members give as a way of celebrating the whole process of sharing these stories, as you talk about. So interesting thing happened this year. Our communications committee votes on these awards, and they have ranked votes. But this year, unusually, all of them independently, working from home, put in their votes, and each person unanimously voted for one article to be the best article. And Leslie Davidson, your article, Dancing in Small Spaces, is the PostScript Excellence winner. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's lovely. That's really lovely, Tim. Thank you. And so I'm so grateful for for being able to share it through that through PostScript, that lovely letter from the woman who was dancing with her husband. Made it so worthwhile. And you've been so kind and helpful. I really appreciate it. But thank you. I feel very, very honored and touched.